Hey, it's NPR's Book of the Day. I'm Andrew Limbaugh. The debut YA novel, We Deserve Monuments, from author Jas Hammonds, is getting all these great reviews. The book touches on race and queerness and intergenerational drama, all these heavy topics. And in this interview with NPR's Juana Hammonds shares this thing that their mentor said, that debut authors often try to put everything into that first book because it might be their only shot, which I can totally see resulting in a book that's kind of a mess, but that doesn't happen here. Instead, Hammonds talks about balancing all the heavy and heady subject matter with something joyful, like young love.
We Deserve Monuments is the debut novel by writer Jas Hammonds. It's a young adult love story and a family mystery, in which Hammonds touches on the familiar through their own lens.
I wanted to tell a story about a daughter and a mother and a grandmother. Like, I jokingly call my book like Gilmore Girls, but make it black and gay, just like in relationships to the women in the story.
Their main character is 17-year-old Avery Anderson.
She is on the cusp of her senior year when her mom decides to uproot the whole family from DC to go down to the small town in Georgia where she grew up because the family matriarch is dying and in her final days.
And as Avery tries to unravel a painful family secret, she also finds herself crushing hard on Simone, the girl next door. There's a lot in this book that will keep readers guessing, especially the character who sets everything in motion. So I had to ask Jas Hammonds about her. So we've just got to dig in here and talk about Mama Letty, Avery's grandmother. You make her feel really familiar. She is grumpy and wisecracking, but has this heart of gold. I don't want to give any spoilers here, but there comes to be this incredibly shocking complexity to her story. Tell us about her and why you give her this vibe of depth and mystery.
So, Mama Letty was actually the first character that came to me when I started writing the book. And that first draft, I started writing it in November 2016. As we all know, it was a very volatile time in US politics, and I was just so angry. And I had nowhere to put this anger. And so I think I gave it a lot to Mama Letty, this Black woman who has felt so ignored throughout her entire life. But her wit and her humor, I don't know, it came incredibly natural to me. I wanted her to feel like a lot of our own family members because, like, I personally didn't have a grandmother that was necessarily like a fountain of love and sweaters and warm hugs. Like, no, there were fights around the dinner tables and there were wisecracks and jokes and stuff. So I definitely modeled her a lot after people in my own family.
I wonder, what do you think this book says to us about grief? Because we, of course, see it through Avery, who knows that her time with her grandmother is short and that anticipatory grief. But we also see it through others who lost loved ones many, many years before, but who are still really hurting.
Yeah. I think grief is just messy. It's not a perfect circle. And I think that in We Deserve Monuments in particular, the anticipatory grief is really front and center because it's the feeling of, I know that this person is about to die. I know that our time is limited. And Avery has a conversation with two of her new friends that she meets in Bardell, and they have a discussion over, oh, well, her new friend Jade, her mother was murdered and it happened like in an instant. And somebody mentions like, well, at least Avery gets the chance to say goodbye. And grief doesn't work like that. And death doesn't follow anybody's timeline, like a perfect timeline. And so I think that especially as a teenager, that's that specific coming of age moment that is so heartbreaking when you realize, oh, like there are people that I will never get to meet, as in Avery never got to meet her grandfather. And that's a different kind of grief. So I definitely wanted to talk about like all of the incredibly hard things that are happening to our young folks, and the different ways that grief shows up unexpected and sudden.
You know, this book is so many things at once. It's this unfolding mystery, it's a deep exploration of intergenerational trauma and racism, but it's also this really beautiful queer love story. So I hope that you can talk to us some about that part of this book.
I was told when I was writing this first draft by a mentor of mine that debut authors, we try to just fit everything in because you don't know if you're going to get a chance. Like, it just feels like you got that one shot. So I definitely feel like I was trying to fit the weight of the world in this book. And that was so important to me to balance that dark with the light and the glow of being seen and falling in love for the first time. And, it for me, like I was, just a complete wreck with the recent news about the mass shooting in an LGBTQ nightclub out in Colorado. And that just really hit me because, queer cultural spaces are threatened. They're being threatened. To me, it's really important to talk about the joy and the love in these places. And Avery and Simone, like one of their dates is at this kind of underground club that you only know about if, you're queer and Black. Like it is specifically like for them. And I think that their love story is very sweet and very tender. But I also just think they make a really beautiful pair of friends.
One of the things that strikes me about their story is the fact that Avery finds this love and this really beautiful acceptance of her authentic, biracial, queer self in a small town in Georgia in the deep South after coming from feeling rejected and alienated from her own peers, her friends in a big city like DC. I
Hmm.
wonder, was that intentional on your part?
Absolutely. It was intentional because I think it's important for me to showcase that queer people exist everywhere. We exist, and we not only exist, we thrive everywhere. And that includes small rural towns, especially down in the deep South. And I wanted to show, that you don't necessarily have to escape to the big city to find a community that is going to love you and uplift you.
So, this is a young adult novel, though I have to say, I'm a little older than that and I could not put it down. So, I wonder, what do you specifically hope that your young readers might take away when they put this book down?
There's an ongoing theme about giving yourself grace. If teens read this book and if they take anything away, I hope it's that. I hope that it's, you know, there's a power in community and asking for help and, asking to be seen and being witnessed and just really knowing that you don't have to go through this world alone and that there are people out there who will love you and uplift your whole self. That was just really important to me, especially for young people.
Jas Hammonds, thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Jas Hammonds' debut novel, We Deserve Monuments, is out now.